Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. I hope your week is unfolding oh so beautifully well. You're having a tremendous time accomplishing everything you set your mind to, and you are ready for a lovely and exciting day tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be a Friday. We're excited about that. And tomorrow we're going to have one stream. It's going to be early in the morning, so 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. We'll be back here, so mark those calendars if you care to join us. But today we got a great stream planned ahead. We got a crazy senator out from California who's going nuts, and we'll talk about it today. This senator is called Alex Padilla, but I think here, since we're essentially at war with Mexico, we're just going to call it Padilla, because, you know, it's got the two L's in there. We'll have to decide on that. You'll let me know what you think. But we'll continue on. We're not having Taco Tuesdays or Taco Thursdays. We're not doing Guatemala margaritas or Senator Van Hollen trips down to El Salvador. We're going to see what's going on with California. So I got a bunch of clips of what happened today. He went wild, and Kristi Noem was speaking innocently and peacefully when this dude came in and attacked. And he had to be thrown out of there. And we'll go through it. Got a couple of clips on this. Here's another clip here. And we'll go through it in more detail. But Kristi Noem came out after the fact and explained a lot of what actually happened. Padilla came out and he started, and they're so upset about this. Except he was the one who broke total protocol and should never have done what he did. And of course, no one's above the law. So Tricia McLaughlin has been working overtime, smashing back on the left-wing propaganda on this. But even CNN brought this dude in, and this dude is even admitting, he's like, yeah, you can't just barge in to a press briefing while somebody's in the middle of a speech. It's not even Q&A time, weird senator. So they're trying to turn this into something, obviously, and we'll go through it in detail, see what some of the reaction is. But there was a lot more. There was a lot of craziness going on today. Even this representative called Salud Carbajal, Democrat from California, he was born in Mexico. Now he's serving our country, so-called, in Congress, representing people. So born in Mexico, and now he's in Congress screaming at Hegseth, saying, you're not worthy of my questions, to Pete Hegseth. Very condescending. He calls Pete an embarrassment to this country. We're going to listen to him, and the Pete just sit there and go, whatever. So this dude, not even born here, coming into our Congress, screaming at other brave servicemen like Pete Hegseth, getting obliterated in the process. So we'll go through that. We'll also learn more about what happened with Mark Lamont Hill. Crazy situation here. Check this out. Man, this chick, whoa! All right, so we'll come back on that. Madness over there. And we also got Trump was a little bit crazy today, too. Trump's talking about we're going to, I guess, grant amnesty to farmers and maybe Trump hotel workers, too. I don't know. But we'll talk about that, because then it seems like he walked this back a little bit today, right in the aftermath. A lot of people like us were pretty disgusted by an earlier tweet today, kind of going, the heck was that we just read there? Yeah, that's disgusting. So we came back on that, and then Trump kind of walked that back. We'll read through that, and hopefully this is the tone that we'll see moving forward. But we'll come back on it. We got Kristi Noem. We'll round out the speech. Then we'll turn our attention to the Newsom lawsuit, because we were in court today, and I did listen to a good portion of the hearing before he had to hop on here. But we got Margot Cleveland, who was listening to what happened. Of course, Gavin Newsom sued to try to stop the National Guard from coming in. And I was listening to this, and I don't think that the judge is going to find in favor of the Trump administration, just based on how this judge was interviewing or questioning both sides today. So we'll go through that. We'll also take a look at Trump's filing. Of course, this will be on appeal, but this is Breyer. This is a super Democrat from California, and they played the audio today, so we got to listen to it, and we'll see where it goes, but not optimistic about it. But we'll come through that. We also got Gavin Newsom, who's now copyright striking people who who are making fun of him. So this guy over at Town Hall, and Larry O'Connor's his name. What's up, Larry? He got his video claim. He's making fun of Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom's like, take that down. Pathetic. So we'll go through that. We'll see what that's all about. We got a post from LA police and Homeland Security from Liz Wheeler. She got her hands on that. And Nick Sorter clipping a little bit more from President Trump. Then we had a very fun sanctuary city hearing today. Pam Bondi came out and announced that they're going to be suing more sanctuary cities. And some of the governors, including PB&J Pritzker and Tim Walz, were out today in Congress. And Tim Walz was getting into it with our friend Byron Donalds. And Byron Donalds is saying, you know, why are you calling ICE agents Gestapo? And Tim Walz had a tough time today. A lot of questions about whether or not Pritzker went into women's bathrooms. I don't know. Maybe he did. He says he didn't. But lots of questions about that since, you know, he posted about it. So we'll come back on that. We got Tom Emmer obliterating Tim Walz and even Anna Paulina Luna in the House lacing in the tampon Tim. So bunch of good stuff coming up, my friends. Very glad that you're here and with us and joining us. And thank you to our membos who are membos. We had a great members only stream this morning. If you'd like to become a membo, that'd be great. We'd love your support. And we would love to see you on our next members only stream, which will not be until next week because we are not going to be here on Saturday for our members only stream. We're going to celebrate Father's Day at the lake. And so I will miss you dearly, but we have to honor our fathers too. So we're going to go do that, my friends. So members, thanks for being membos, but we'll see you back here on Monday for the next members only stream. Of course, today there'll be a members only after party. And tomorrow after our morning stream, we'll also have our members only after party. So we'll see you then. All right. So my friends, thanks for becoming members. Thanks for supporting our work. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing this video with a friend or family member. And thanks for coming back tomorrow. We've got a bunch of business to get into today, starting with this guy. A crazed senator in California now detained. He was released shortly thereafter. But this, of course, is Alex Padilla. He's a senator from California, and he was caught here by Bill Melugin on camera getting thrown out of Kristi Noem's press briefing. Kristi Noem, of course, the Secretary of Homeland Security. She's got a right to have an uninterrupted press briefing, not invaded by insane senators who are coming and screeching around. Now, the Democrats are trying to turn this into the little George Floyd situation again, and civil rights are under attack, and this is dictator and all this stuff. And of course, this was engineered by Padilla, who's out here trying to really have some relevancy, just like Gavin Newsom, like, please arrest me, please. And so he got escorted out. I got a bunch of clips here queued up on this. We've got Kristi Noem's reaction to this. We got Padilla's reaction to this, crying. But all of this, of course, was caused by him in an effort to create attention and to try to ensnare Trump into some other political attack. But it's pathetic. It's transparent as you can get them. And here's what Bill Melugin shared with us today. Said, breaking! California Democrat Padilla just crashed Secretary Noem's press conference and he was forcibly removed. Here's what it looked like today.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
Get out!
Heads off!
How many of our ICE agents have been doxxed?
Nice job, fellas.
How they have been targeted?
All right. So he starts to identify himself right after this is already kind of ongoing, right? There's already arms on him right now just from this clip from Bill. So then he starts screaming, I'm Senator Padilla.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for
Padilla.
the Secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen.
All right. So, right, he's coming in. She's right in the middle of her press briefing. And the security guard goes, who the hell is this crazy person? You can't have crazy people just coming in here. Nobody knows if he's a senator or not. There's 100 of these senators. They all look alike. Nobody can tell the difference between them. And the problem is, how do you identify that person? Well, our friend Dan Bongino came out and he posted this. He says, you know what? With regard to the incident in LA, the senator in question was not wearing a security pin and he physically resisted law enforcement when he was confronted. Our FBI personnel acted completely appropriately while assisting Secret Service. And we are grateful for their professionalism and their service, from Dan. So nobody knew who this guy was. He wasn't pre-cleared. And so he just came in, started screaming at Kristi Noem. Here's the other angle over from Fox. You can watch it happening here. Kristi Noem is right in the middle of her speech. She's not taking questions. And here comes this lunatic.
We are staying here to liberate this city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this. Also, I want to talk specifically to the rioters and to the politicians in Los Angeles.
The matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to talk about specifically how many of our ICE agents have been doxxed for doing their duty, how they have been targeted, and how their families have been put in jeopardy, and that we're not going to allow that anymore as well, that those individuals who are purposely endangering our ICE agents and our law enforcement officers and their families will be prosecuted for what they are doing as far as perpetuating violence on them.
Okay, so right in the middle of her speech, there's no questions. He tried to barge his way in there and interrupt the peaceful delivery of a press briefing. Remember how much we heard that? The peaceful transition. We were having a peaceful transition of information out of Kristi Noem's mouth to us. And this senator came and insurrected that transition unlawfully. Now, this is very curious about what happened over here because, as you can see, we've got another angle here from our friend Alex Michelson. He says, breaking, Alex Padilla tries to interrupt a press conference again. California's senior U.S. senator was handcuffed and detained. Here's another one here, another angle. He just walked right up there. Walks right up. This security guard's like, who the hell are you, dude?
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands off.
how many of our ICE agents have been doxxed.
And you're down.
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go, I put behind my back.
All right. Cool. Other hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
Yeah, nobody knows who he is. And it shouldn't matter anyways. You don't get to barge in there.
There's no recording allowed out here.
I did not know.
There's no recording allowed out here per FBI, right?
So what, I'm sorry?
There's no recording allowed out here.
No recording.
That's my boss half. There's no recording allowed out here.
Yeah, well, it's on the internet now.
I'm not a member of the press.
There's no recording allowed.
I understand.
Yeah, now if this was any other citizen, he would be charged with a lot of crime. Theoretically, right? You could be charged with a lot of crimes. Like if this was a January 6er, for example, or a Proud Boy member or something like this. This was Joe Biden's DOJ, right? Now it's a senator, and obviously they get special privileges. It's because they're above the law. They can kind of do whatever they want. And all that happens is he sits down and will talk to Kristi Noem. And the whole thing, I'm sure, is not going to turn into any charges. And I'm not sure that it should either, right? Because all it's going to do is turn him into a martyr and give him exactly what he wants. So this is where, they're all sharing this photo now. Gavin Newsom's like, we never thought this would happen in America. Never seen this happen before. Yeah, when's the last time you saw a lunatic senator just kind of barge in front of a perfectly peaceful press briefing? No permission, no invitation, not even Q&A time. Senator knows better than this and was trying to instigate all of this. So come on. Then he's going to come out and give us a little, tears. Senator, oh, my back, my neck, get your knee off my neck. Okay, we got it. Yeah, very, 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 it's Hollywood. I guess they're all from California. So he probably was over there getting some tips from Beyonce or whatever. So that's happening there. We also have Kristi Noem, who responded to this and said nobody knew who this dude was. This weird man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me, shouting. So obviously we had to act.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you with us today. We all saw what happened in the video of that room when he was physically taken out, and you heard just now his response, and I understand you had a personal conversation with him as well. So what do you want to say about all of this?
You know, what I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time. And that this, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here. So we sat down, had a conversation. We probably disagree on 90% of the topics, but we agreed to exchange phone numbers. We'll continue to talk and share information, and I think that's the way it should be in this country. I wish he would have acted that way in the beginning instead of creating a scene like this.
Like a responsible adult senator, but he's not. He's a Democrat in California. So this is what they have to do. They're trying to engineer some sort of a response, just like Gavin Newsom. Come on, Tom. Arrest me, Tom. Tough guy. I'm waiting. All right, Gavin. Just relax, okay? That's why you're not on Hollywood big screens, because you're a terrible actor. You're a liar, and everybody can see it. But anyways, that is happening. Now, here is Padilla. He came out, and he's also saying he's just getting choked up. Listen to a little bit of this.
To provide oversight and accountability.
What happened?
While I was waiting for the briefing with General Gouveia, I learned that Secretary Noem was having a press conference a couple of doors down the hall.
And tried to insurrect a peaceful press conference.
Since the beginning of the year, but especially over the course of recent weeks, several of my colleagues have been asking the Department of Homeland Security for more information and more answers on their increasingly extreme immigration enforcement actions. And we've gotten little to no information.
Okay, fast forward.
To the ground.
What happened?
And I was handcuffed.
It's great.
I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question.
What a straw man. You didn't show up with a question. You ran and rushed the stage, Padilla.
You can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
You mean illegal aliens? We're deporting them for being illegal aliens, just like we would stop a maniac from rushing the stage to attack the Secretary of Homeland Security, obviously. So a lot of tears from him, and he's probably going to have to get a therapist for his little kerfuffle. Probably a lot of excitement for his office over there that they created. So a lot of this is going on, okay? Libs going wild, all these retweets, I'm under attack, democracy. And it was just self-engineered by the Democrats, obviously. So Dan clarified, nobody knew who this dude was, obviously. And Patriot Pirate over on X said, hey, did a quick search on this and found out that no one is above the law. That's right. You don't get to just rush in there because you claim to be a senator. So if anybody just rushes in and says, hey, I'm a senator, then they get access to the stage. Nobody has to validate them or anything. They just walk right up there if you claim that. Just like if you're an illegal person who unalives other people, you can just go to Home Depot. And as long as you touch Home Depot, ICE can't come on there because you're a day laborer now. You're not a murderer anymore. Got it. So Alex Padilla, he posted on his X, no one's above the law. 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 Then he comes out and says, I'm clearly above the law. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And he's justified in doing it because he says that he's just a senator asking a question. Well, Senator, you're not in the Senate chamber anymore. You're in an executive branch press briefing. Imagine if Kristi Noem came rushing you when you were in your little disgusting Senate seat, sitting there doing nothing other than talking in circles with your other compatriots on any given day. Imagine if she just came in here and said, okay, you guys lecture everybody in there. You tell Scott Bessent he's like a xenophobic bigot, and it's a never-ending battle with you people. So the senator knew what he was doing, and he got dealt with accordingly. Tricia McLaughlin over from DHS said, the Senator Padilla, he chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference, didn't identify himself or have his Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. He was repeatedly told to back away and did not comply with repeated commands. Secret Service thought he was an attacker and officers acted appropriately. Then Secretary Noem met with him and explained to him, like a bad boy, why can't you know why you can't do that, Sam? Yes, I understand. And then, of course, he came out and started crying in front of the cameras about cooks in America who are illegal aliens. And where are all the cooks out there stopping the other illegal aliens from burning and torching the cars all across America? So even CNN is agreeing that Padilla was acting like the fool. Stephen Chung clipped this. You know, he's over at the White House helping with comms. And he says, even CNN's legal expert shames Cassie with the facts. Kate Hunt is her name. The facts, I'm pretty sure, says that his unhinged actions during the press conference are totally unreasonable. This guy said, you know, at that point, Padilla is going to now be escorted out, right? You can't interrupt something like that that's already in progress without those consequences. Like, what do you think's going to happen, Senator? You think you're above the law? Like, you can just go into an executive branch press briefing and interrupt the peaceful transition of information out of Kristi's brain into our heads?
Point. This is a federal building. You can't just, wander in there necessarily. What reporting do you have, and how should we, in your view, be analyzing how we're seeing these agents respond?
Well, it's easy to think about this as one incident, but actually from a law enforcement perspective, we're really looking at three separate incidents that happened within a short period of time. First, you have the DHS secretary who is addressing the press. This was not a Q&A period, and she's interrupted. She's interrupted by someone who is speaking very loudly, and so her security detail confronts what we obviously now know to be the senator, and at that point, he is now going to be escorted out. You can't interrupt something like that that's already in progress without having those consequences. But the second incident, in my view, happens the moment as officers are trying to lead him out, he then turns and walks back towards kind of into those agents. At that point, from a security detail perspective, we're taking this person out against their will.
Clearly.
We've asked the person, and again, this is all happening very quickly, but the moment he then turns into them, they realize this is not someone who is going to comply.
And you got to take him out at that point, right? This is now an individual who has become hostile and adverse, and so you got to take him out. So even Kay Hunt's over there. She's like, wow, this is not exactly what we were expecting from you. Guy's probably not going to be invited back, but clearly accurate, and Padilla knew what he was doing and now got dealt with accordingly. So I don't think that we'll see any criminal charges for him. I think that that's even probably the smarter political play. I understand the fact that he is kind of above the law. A lot of other people, especially if you were on the opposite end of the aisle under a different administration, you might be in prison for this. J6ers might be in prison for something like this. But if you charged him with a crime, then he's essentially going to become a martyr. And they engineered this for that to happen. So I don't know that that would, help the cause in any way. I think that really the more condescending, almost like you're like an older brother, like Kristi Noem's kind of like just an older brother and just kind of like, you acted like an idiot. And we just dealt with it. Okay, so we're not going to punish you or anything. Just go sit in the corner and behave. You've embarrassed yourself and you should feel bad. So I don't know. That will remain to be seen. But it looks like as it stands right now, no charges are coming. And Padilla is above the law. Now, in addition to Padilla, another crazy congressperson from California is this guy, Salud Carbajal. And Salud is a representative who serves California. He's a Democrat, serves a big part of Santa Maria, Obispo, and Santa Barbara, a big area over here in California. And he's got a pretty big constituency in the Hispanic population. I think it's about 40% of the county is Hispanic somewhere. I think I saw the numbers somewhere. Anyways, yeah, there it is. So here, Hispanic, right? Almost 40% of the people Hispanic, just under 50% white in that district, and a small percentage of other individuals. And so he's been in there for a long time. And his background, of course, is he was born in Mexico. And I think that's important because he's going to come in here and scream at Hegseth and scream about how Hegseth is not worthy of his time. But just like we talk about a lot of these foreign judges who were born in foreign lands, they come in here, they issue nationwide injunctions like Chutkin from Jamaica or Amir Ali, who's like a citizen like 5 years ago. He's coming in and issuing nationwide injunctions to stop Trump's USAID cancellations. So all these foreigners come in, and then they come in, they get citizenship somehow, I think, maybe, don't know. And what happens is they run for Congress, and then the other illegals vote for them in their districts, and then they get elected, and then they can come out and scream and screech at people like Pete Hegseth for not being worthy of their time after they've immigrated to our country, and then they want to reshape everything to be like their homeland. We're pretty tired of it. So here you can see he's been around for a long time, and he has voted in line with Joe Biden's position 100% of the time. He got a Ukraine award, amazing, so awarded by the Ukrainian parliament, incredible. He's got 2 kids. He said he was vehemently opposed to provisions that banned the gender-affirming care, but then still voted yes. He supports Israel. He is opposed to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And he's been around for a long time. He was in the Marine Corps Reserve for 8 years during the Gulf War, although he did not leave the contiguous United States. So in the reserves there. And now he's just attacking Hegseth, right? So in addition to the other attacks that are out there by lunatic senators, we also have a lunatic House representative. Here's what he sounded like.
Do you think political allegiance to Trump is a requirement for serving our nation, either in uniform or a civilian in the department?
I'm incredibly proud, as there are millions of Americans.
No. Not today, Hegseth. Yes or no?
Congressman, you know what a silly question that is.
But silly enough to warrant a very straightforward answer. Yes or no?
We all support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
You know what?
I'm
not going to waste my time anymore. You're not worthy of my attention or my questions.
Wow.
You're an embarrassment to this country. You're unfit to lead. And there's been bipartisan members of Congress that have called for your resignation. You should just get the hell out and let somebody competently lead this department.
That's what we think about you there, Representative. If you don't think that Hegseth is worth your time, Hegseth is duly appointed by the elected president of this country and was affirmed by the Senate. And it's not worth your time. And you're going to sit here and lecture Hegseth, another man who served his country and runs the DOD now, and lecture him?
Mr. Chairman, do we not have any decorum in here?
No, not from him.
Thank you very much. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back. And I would urge everybody to remember and maintain a decorum suitable for this chamber with their further comments. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Wild. So that's what's going on there. You've got a foreign-born congressman coming in and saying it's not even worth our time, right? And by the way, his other, I guess, countrymen in Mexico, like the President Sheinbaum, who got elected over there for somehow, no idea how, she's obviously saying that they should mobilize people. And you've got the Senate President of Mexico, who's also re-showing new maps of America. Then you've got Mexican-born representatives who are coming into our Congress and then telling our duly nominated and elected representatives that they're not worthy of our time. Good, yeah, and that's what's going on. So, right, if we're still playing this fiction like this is a peaceful protest about due process or whatever, it's not. This is now about a hostile takeover, and we've got inside men from other countries who are acting as advocates for the Democratic Party, lecturing our nominees and our duly appointed Secretary of Defense. Wild times there. And a lot of the other representatives are just, well, just don't be a bigot, don't be xenophobic, allow foreigners to come in here and just take control over everything. Courts, and the only thing that they can't get is the presidency yet, right? Until they get a majority and then get rid of that via an amendment too. And then they can put someone else in there too. And why we just kind of sit around and allow this, allow this politically, and everybody just kind of sits on their hands and doesn't want to talk about this crap is ridiculous. You can see what's happening. And now we've got more. So that guy came out, and Democrats over here are attacking even their own people. Mark Lamont Hill, a Democrat super commentator, also got attacked by, I guess, one of his own. He was speaking, and somebody in the audience came up and attacked him. So here's what's going on. Be cautious out there, my friends. This is not good. We hope Mark's okay.
I want to ask you to take a step back, please.
Hey! Oh!
I want to ask you to take a step back, please.
All right, well, yeah, so things are pretty crazy out there, and it was a good tackle. We've seen some pretty good tackles. Now, all right, she's going to have a bruised back there. Now, we also are seeing a little bit of craziness also out of the White House, just a smidge. This was hopefully a quick course correction, but this morning we read through a curious post from the president where he said that they were essentially, if you read between the lines, going to grant some sort of an amnesty, whether it's, I don't know, citizenship or residency or work permits or some sort of a visa status or maybe TPS status or whatever for hospitality workers and for farmers. And we thought, well, because that's, I think, what, like they say, they all are, is like some worker hospitality, some service industry, some, okay, and that's kind of a big number there, right? And we're asking ourselves, why did the president all of a sudden say we're going to start to backtrack on this mass deportation thing? And we read that and we're like, that didn't sound very good. And then we heard this today. We thought, wait a minute, maybe Trump's going to clarify something. And then he came out and he said this, and we all went, huh?
Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. I have two. First, on immigration. What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
Oh, great. Common sense. We know what that means. Okay, we've been hearing that our whole lives. We just need common sense border reform. And it's going to be a comprehensive plan. It's just going to put together some common sense ideas that are going to solve this problem. And everything's going to be fine. No, we don't want any common sense. Common sense is you secure the border. All the people who are here illegally, go back. And then the problem is solved. And then you can start to work from there. Then if you want to say, all right, you can come back in if you're this person, this visa, whatever, farm worker, whatever, but you got to fix the problem. And right now, carving out exceptions for certain components is not solving the problem. In fact, it sounds like it is exacerbating it and extending it. And this is an existential crisis for the future of the country, since we have foreign invaders who are now standing up their assets all over the place in multiple cities across the country. So here's Trump. Now, he got a lot of criticism for this comment. When he came out and said that, everyone went, what? What? And so he then posted this right in the immediate aftermath. He said, look, at 11:03, shortly after that press conference today, he said, Biden let 21 million unvetted illegal aliens flood into the country from some of the most dangerous and dysfunctional nations on earth. Many of them are murderers and terrorists. The tsunami of illegals has destroyed Americans' public schools, hospitals, parks, community resources, and living conditions. They have stolen American jobs, consumed billions of dollars in free welfare, and turned once idyllic communities like Springfield, Ohio, into third world nightmares. I campaigned on and received a historic mandate for the largest deportation program in American history. That's right. Polling shows overwhelming public support for getting the illegals out, and that is exactly what we will do. As Commander-in-Chief, I will always protect and defend the heroes of ICE and Border Patrol, whose work has already resulted in the most secure border in American history. Anyone who assaults or attacks an ICE or border agent will do the hard time in jail. Those who are here illegally should either self-deport using the Home app, or ICE will find you and remove you. America is not negotiable. All right, so hard to reconcile that with the other statement that he just made earlier in the morning, other than the fact that Trump listens to the people, listens to his base, listens to reaction. And I do think this happens a lot, right? Trump tests a bunch of stuff, kind of A/B tests a bunch of things, and then the stuff that is bad, he punts and keeps the rest of it. So much more in favor of this statement than the other statement. Okay, once the problem is solved, or on the path to being solved, much more solved than it is now, then they can start talking about, whatever the next step is in the future. But we got a long way to go before that happens, and our country was invaded for 4 years. We got plenty of people here to do the work. It's time to deport. So Trump making the change on that. Of course, Kristi Noem now safe from lunatic Senator Padilla, who is going to try to become the martyr. They're going to try to make him a martyr. I think the administration will probably do the smart political thing and just leave it be and just say, you embarrassed yourself. That's pain enough. We're not going to give you what you want, turn this into a spectacle that you can exploit for the next 6 months while a criminal trial goes on, draw a bunch of attention to you in California. Instead, just treat him like a moron who's acting like a moron. So Padilla and other foreign-born representatives also now coming in and scolding our Secretary of Defense like it's nothing on behalf of what feels like a foreign power, because in his district, people are waving around Mexican flags. Hegseth sent in the National Guard to go calm that situation down so ICE could do their jobs, and now he is scolding Hegseth for doing that, for protecting America. But he's from Mexico, so he probably thinks, like the Mexican president of the Senate, that it's actually Mexican land, and Pete Hegseth is not worth his time because he's from Mexico, running it like Mexico. But of course, we're going to keep our eye on this one and see if any other Democrat senators act like lunatics in the future. All right, now let's turn our attention over to the lawsuit. So today we had a court hearing, and here is what went down. President Trump and the DOJ doubling down in their battle against Gavin Newsom. Newsom sued and said, "Get your National Guard out of my city. So what if I'm incompetent and my city's burning to the ground? That's what we like here. We're filled with illegal aliens. We're sanctuary cities. And so what do we care if other people are burning down our city? It's our problem, not yours, so get out." Well, obviously Trump wants to save the country and keep our union together without it being broken apart by Democratic operatives who are more interested in appeasing foreign citizens and illegals than their own citizens. So here we got Trump responding in the Northern District of California. We had a hearing today. Gavin Newsom sued Trump. Trump responded and is explaining why they have full power to keep the National Guard there in California. And there were a bunch of additional exhibits that we'll run through here, and then check out what happened in court, courtesy of Margot Cleveland, because she was reporting on this from the hearing today in front of Judge Breyer in California. So what Trump's DOJ submitted in here is the following. They said, listen, all right, Gavin Newsom is suing us. Here's our response. In a crass political stunt endangering American lives, Gavin Newsom seeks to use this court to stop the President of the United States from exercising his lawful statutory and constitutional power to ensure that federal personnel and facilities are protected. But under the Constitution, the President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and responsible for ensuring protection of these facilities. Now, over the past several days, violent rioters who object to enforcement of federal law have targeted and damaged federal buildings, injured federal personnel, and impeded federal functions. The LAPD and other local law enforcement have been unable to bring order to the city. In fact, in a press conference, the LAPD chief of police lamented that things have gotten out of control, and he warned somebody could easily be killed. Evaluating the unrest and the threats to the enforcement, President Trump responded by using the authority vested in him by law and the Constitution to federalize and deploy the California National Guard to quell the mobs and to restore order. When the situation escalated, then Hegseth deployed a group of Marines to further assist, saying to the court, there is no rioter's veto to the enforcement of federal law. And the President has every right under the Constitution and by the law to call forth the National Guard and the Marines to quell lawless violence directed against the enforcement of federal law. The protests are not there with the end game of making their voices heard and petitioning for a redress of grievances to their government. It's not that. That's not what it is. And even if it was that, I would still have my doubts about whether those First Amendment protections apply to illegal aliens in our country, whether they should have that same privilege to go do those things, because our Constitution is for us, not for them. And they're going to quell the lawless violence, but they're not here for that protest. They're here to obstruct, and they're waving foreign flags. By being in the streets and obstructing ICE, that is a hostile protest. Waving foreign flags around. The outcome, the end game of the protest is not a petition for a redress of grievances. It is to obstruct the society. And the National Guard is coming in to stop that. And Gavin Newsom and his people cannot. Yet instead of working to bring order to LA, Newsom filed a lawsuit in San Francisco. He wants the court to come in here and tell Trump he can't do it. The extraordinary relief that they want would countermand the Commander-in-Chief's military directive, and it would cause more problems. It would be constitutionally anathema, and it would be dangerous. Now, on the merits, Gavin Newsom is baseless. The president properly invoked his authority to federalize the National Guard. They admit even that California and LA did experience unrest, but they asked this court to second-guess the president now. Now, that is the precise type of sensitive judgment that belongs to the president. And you owe us a high deference. The statute empowers the president to determine what force, quote, he considers necessary to suppress a rebellion or to execute federal laws. Clear as day. Not the governor and not a federal court. You don't have the power to do this. Now, Newsom also objects. They say, well, the president did not consult with. And listening to the oral arguments today, this came up a lot. The judge was like, well, I thought you have to go through the governor. They say, well, the president did not obtain consent of the governor. They say, so what? The law doesn't require consent of the governor. It merely directs, as a procedural matter, that the president's orders be conveyed through the governor. They say they were, right? And the judge says, well, through the governor, the judge, I think, is going to make his ruling on this basis, is going to say that through the governor means there's some sort of a check function on that. And the president didn't do that. They said, well, we sent the email to him and then just acted through him. You know, but he's going to say, we have to act through their power, and it's the governor's power. So they spent a lot of time on that word today. Anyways, plaintiff's objection is also based on the Posse Comitatus Act, is also equally misdirected. Neither the National Guard or the Marines are engaged in law enforcement, which is what that act covers. They are protecting law enforcement, who's doing the law enforcement, which are consistent with long-standing practice and inherent protective power to safeguard federal property and personnel. Now, they offer, Newsom, no contrary evidence, only a speculative assertion that the Marines will be used for unlawful purposes in the future. But that's speculation. There's no evidence that that's going to happen. And so the balance of the equities here cuts decisively against a judge intervening on this. These are military judgments and deployments. Specifically, when it comes to law enforcement and national security issues, you are not properly set up for this. And if you make a decision, you could cripple the federal government and our efforts. And even as the chief of police said, that could lead to a loss of life. And there's historical context to this too. Judge, courts did not interfere when Eisenhower deployed the military to go protect school desegregation. Courts did not interfere when Nixon deployed the military to deliver mail in the midst of a postal strike. And the courts shouldn't interfere either. Saying the Constitution authorizes Congress to raise and support an army and to organize the militia. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. And the Guard wears two hats. And then what happened is we passed some law, right? So the Constitution says that the Guards can exist, or in other words, the National Guard is now kind of a form of a militia. Then U.S. Code came into place. Congress has granted the president several authorities for when he can call in the National Guard, including the Insurrection Act, which is not what we're talking about here. Statute is this one. Begins back in 1792, and we've got a basis for it. So now on Friday, June 6th, we had a large crowd, right? What they were doing, they weren't peaceful protests. And even if they're just standing there peacefully, whatever, not throwing Molotov cocktails or spitting on cops, if they're obstructing ICE, okay, if there's an ICE raid and you have a mob of people who are coming in to prevent federal law enforcement from enforcing the law, they can call that, a peaceful protest. They can call it civil disobedience or whatever, but the actual practical effect of that is obstruction of ICE. So if that is happening, that is a crime. It's not a peaceful protest anymore. So several individuals were arrested in the operation and brought to the downtown LA. Now, but they're going to try to conflate those things. They're going to say, no, as long as they're standing there and they're not doing anything like spitting on somebody, that's fine. No, it's obstruction. At 5 p.m. that night, and they may not be charging all of them for obstruction. You're going to go charge 50 or 100 people with all of those, right, kind of lower level offenses. Maybe they will. The protests quickly turned violent. I think they're focusing more on that, like the violent stuff. They spread across the downtown area, threatening federal facilities. Protesters pinned down federal protective services, and officers were left severely outnumbered while trying to defend a parking garage that's connected to several buildings. Protesters threw concrete chunks, bottles of liquid, and other objects at the officers. Protesters also attempted to use large rolling commercial dumpsters as battering rams to breach the parking garage. They caused damage to federal property. Officers feared for their safety. ICE and Homeland responded to the support of the officers under siege. They attempted to use non-lethal force to disperse the crowd. The federal officers managed to prevent a breach of the facility, but it took LAPD officers nearly an hour and a half to arrive and to assist the federal officers in pushing the crowd back from the parking garage. Now, meanwhile, the protest turned extremely violent. News reports showing demonstrators using chairs, dumpsters, and other weapons. Once on the scene, the LAPD declared an unlawful assembly around 7 p.m., ordered protesters to disperse. Many did not, and instead began attacking the cops. The scene was not clear until 11 p.m., leaving extensive damage to multiple federal buildings. So then at 10:23 on that night, Trump called Newsom. The president informed Newsom of the dangers that the federal personnel and property were being subjected to and directed him to take action to stop the violence. But he didn't, because he's a failure. The violence only intensified the next day. On Saturday, large crowds congregated around an HSI office in a Paramount neighborhood. The crowd once again blocked traffic, began to attack the ERO and the Customs Border Patrol officers. It's not peaceful. Even if they're just standing there with their Mexican flags, that's not peaceful. It's a hostile act of obstruction. 7 hours of nonstop fighting, and then it gets actually physically violent in addition to that. Between federal officers and protesters, the crowd boxed in federal officers. They surrounded an officer's vehicles. These are mob flash mobs. They pummeled them with stones. They launched mortar-style fireworks. They set at least one vehicle on fire. They threw objects all over the place, which caused a Border Patrol officer to suffer from a shattered wrist. The perimeter fence of the federal building was breached, vehicles were damaged, and mortar-style fireworks with multiple explosions were thrown at federal officers. But did they just shoot any women who were running around in the chest and just say, sorry, you shouldn't have come in here? Did they do that? Did you see any federal officers just shoot anybody in the chest who breached anything or who were throwing multiple explosions, or like shoot her in the neck and just say, that's fine, no problem, and then put that cop on C-SPAN or CNN and give him, like a cushy gig in a resort somewhere under private protection? Did that happen? Oh, no, it didn't happen, obviously. Leaders in both political parties have described violence in the strongest terms. Senator John Fetterman, even Democrat, called it anarchy and true chaos. Yeah. Now, protests continued on Sunday and through the moment. Protesters have blocked the freeway. Dumpsters have been lit on fire. Commercial-grade fireworks were set off towards cops, federal officers. Federal and state buildings have been damaged, and the federal building security checkpoint has been in ruins. Officers have been injured. The federal complex in LA has been closed due to the unrest, and people have been severely damaged and vandalized. So in response to all this, on June 7th, Trump signed a memo calling into service 2,000 members of the National Guard. Said, you're out there to temporarily protect ICE. Same night, Newsom came out and said, this is the wrong mission. Later that evening, based on an invocation of another section of the law, Secretary of Defense Hegseth came in and called into federal service the National Guard. By the early morning of the 8th, another general had responded that his orders had been received. He acknowledged his forces were being mobilized. Since those calls to action, guardsmen have been charged with conducting safety and protection. All they're doing is protecting federal personnel property at designated locations by providing security patrols and outer cordon security perimeter of the buildings. This includes National Guardsmen throughout the vicinity. So then Gavin Newsom is trying to turn himself into something. He really, wants to run for president, trying to distinguish himself from the other Pete Booties out there, and sued. On June 10th, they filed their motion for a TRO. We talked about some of that here. The judge came back down, denied it immediately, and then held a hearing today. Says Trump, we're going to win. Here's why. Newsom's motion is terrible. He says we lack authority to federalize the National Guard, but that's just flatly wrong. Just read the law. Section 12406 expressly empowers the president to call the California National Guard into federal service when he considers it necessary to quell a rebellion against the authority of the United States. Saying Trump's reasonably made both of those determinations here, and they're not subject to you, judge, second-guessing what we did here. The president doesn't need the consent of a state governor to give these orders, and they're mischaracterizing the statute to suggest otherwise. And they offer no evidentiary support for their claim that the military forces are engaged in any law enforcement anyways. The president and Hegseth have directed those forces to secure federal property and personnel. That's it. The military is not executing federal law. They're ensuring the safety of other federal law enforcement operations. Plaintiff's objection to this under posse comitatus is also therefore meritless. And everything's pretty clear, they tell us. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, which includes the militia of the several states, okay, in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 2. And Congress has authorized the president to call in the National Guard into the federal service. Congress delegated some of their power to the president in the U.S. Code. So their challenge to the federalization on the National Guard exists on two grounds. They say there weren't the necessary conditions, Trump didn't have the right to do it, and the process through which they were activated is also bad. But they say they're wrong as to both accounts. Here's why. They can't review, judge, the president's decision. There's a longstanding authority that says our actions are not reviewable. These are things that are to the executive branch's discretion. That's why we have a president to make these rapid decisions. If the judge could also review the president, then the judge would just be the president. Okay, judicial review is not the president gets, it's not the judge gets to look at what the president did and then reevaluate the facts and think, well, this is a little too harmful, this is too beneficial, all the things, and then decide, actually, my policy prescription is better. They can look at it. They can say, does the president have the law requires this. Did the president do these things at a bare minimum? Even if you'd disagree, did he check those things? Arguably, yes, great, lawful. That's judicial review, but the judges have come across that, right? And now they've said, well, I don't think it's actually a predatory incursion. Well, you're not in a position to make that discretionary decision. That's why you're a judge, not the president. You don't have all these people reporting to you, like at Homeland Security and the Secretary of State's office and the DOD. You're a judge, so you don't get to substitute your judgment. Now, what's happening here is they're doing that. This decision is to the president. The statute says the president can activate the guardsmen in such numbers as he considers necessary, not the judge. But then the judge will say, well, actually, I don't think it was a rebellion, right? The judge will say, well, I mean, the law says it has to be a rebellion, and I don't think this was a rebellion. And you're substituting your judgment for that. That's the president's judgment. And that is the judge, acting in excess of their Article 3 powers. There is no textual basis in the law for the court or Newsom to second guess the president at all. Indeed, nearly 2 centuries ago, the Supreme Court squarely rejected their position on this, saying the courts had authority to decide whether sufficient exigency supported the decision. Madison. In Martin versus Mott, the Supreme Court held that a challenge to the legality of Madison's decision to call out the militia was beyond judicial scrutiny. Back in 1827, they said, look, the president gets to decide if it's necessary. That's why they're the president. The courts back then said, we can't challenge that. As noted in the background, today's section gives the president statutory authority to call out the National Guard and even makes it more clear. And much like that statute, the same law in Martin under Madison said something very similar. The president may make the judgment to have to make a determination. Did the president do that? Yes. You don't get to disagree with the substance of that determination. In order to mobilize, you got to have like a complete file. Is there a determination in there? Okay, we do a name of the thing and all right, where'd it come from? Got all our paperwork. Great. Got it all in there. You don't have to review it and say, actually, this is not, we wouldn't agree with this because you're not the president. Here, a determination was made. This is not for your discretion, Judge. They operate against the backdrop of constitutional powers, and the president has this power. You don't, Judge. Now, while Newsom repeatedly acknowledges the unchecked violence, they then ask the court to come in and supersede the president's judgment because the judge knows better, saying that this hasn't been enough to invoke the statute. And it says, you don't get to decide that. The president does. It says he. And you should have due respect to the coordinate branches of government. Now, even if some form of deferential judicial review were permissible, to say that the determination was a problematic determination, the president has more than other ample grounds to invoke this. As his memo also explained, it arose out of numerous incidents of violence. There was a rebellion, clearly, under the law. Black's Law Dictionary, 3 definitions of a rebellion: open, organized, armed resistance, and to an established government, which is what's happening, and an organized attempt to change the leader through violence. Civil war, open resistance or opposition to authority or tradition. It's right there. Or historical is disobedience of legal commands or summons. Great. So our memo it conforms to that. Now, they don't dispute that there is violence. They say, well, the violence is coming from you. But their own submission to the court substantiates the president and his judgment. Even one of their own declarants is explaining the severity of the situation. One of their own people said, some protesters unfortunately began to engage in dangerous behavior, like throwing rocks and other objects. 2 deputies were injured. Now, the articles explain, it's madness over there. There's 6 images of burning vehicles, 5 images of this, graffiti of that, all over LAPD headquarters, the U.S. courthouse, and the LA Times building, all tagged up. But then they say that's not enough. But even on their own record, this qualifies as a danger of a rebellion. So it counts. They admit it. That alone is sufficient grounds to invoke the statute. So we've satisfied the rules. Now, second, the president also has another independent basis for this. As other people say in their declarations, there are substantial threats to a lot of the people, including when demonstrators were organizing around the ICE removals. They're enforcing the removals, which is executing the laws of the United States. And they're not allowed to do this safely because these maniacs show up. In fact, in short, 44 individuals were arrested. But that time came with a risk of danger if we can't arrest these people. And their argument ignores the ICE teams and whether they could even carry out their jobs if it's not for their protection. So they argue this prong is inapplicable. They say, well, Nixon used the same argument, but they're not doing a good job of clarifying the distinction. And we also don't need Governor Newsom's input. Okay, it says the president may call into power the National Guard. It says that in the next sentence, it says that orders shall be issued through the governors of the United States. So the statute is clear that orders are issued by the president and they're conveyed through state officials. Nothing in the statute says that Newsom can veto this, and we'll see what the judge says about that. The president complied with this provision. Hegseth's memo went out. There's no dispute that Newsom had knowledge of the order. He even admitted it. And so his procedural objection saying you didn't give us proper notice is meritless. He's trying to stop us on a technicality. But we had the full power to do this. And when Congress wanted to give the governor a veto power, it's done so expressly. And they didn't do that here. So the law, as we are invoking it, has no veto power for Governor Newsom, and their interpretation is correct. And we're not intruding on any state law powers. We're not enforcing the law. Any 10th Amendment claims are ridiculous. We're not violating posse comitatus because all we're doing is restoring order, and that's even an exception to posse comitatus. And we're not going down the Insurrection Act or any of those things, but there's plenty of other powers the president is invoking. And they have not provided any factual basis to say that they're going to violate posse comitatus and start enforcing the law. So it's all speculative. So as it stands, the groundless nature of all these claims is a mismatch. They're asking for relief that is based upon speculative things that have not even happened yet. And so you should not grant an injunction. Allow us to keep the National Guard here. If you don't allow us to do that, it's going to hinder federal law enforcement, and it's going to harm federal employees and property if this lawlessness can continue. Now, the president's reference to this interest was not just mere words on paper. There's documented violence here. Bottles, fireworks, battering rams, breaching the parking gates. Took LAPD 1.5 hours to arrive. Then the next day, the crowd became violent, started attacking ERO and CBP officers for 7 hours. One officer was trapped inside the vehicle. They pummeled his vehicle with stones. LAPD declared downtown an unlawful assembly. They set off fireworks, threw objects in law enforcement, vandalized a federal courthouse, and more. In cases of violent uprising, the National Guard is vital. And so the federal government would suffer more widespread irreparable harm if this judge comes out and says, actually, take him out. We want the violence to continue. Saying this would cause a lot more harm. So against all this, the only thing Newsom is claiming is speculative harms and unsubstantiated harms. Civil unrest began days before the National Guard was mobilized. They didn't cause any of this. Their people in California did. They're illegals. Plaintiffs also complain about the federalization of the guardsmen, saying we have a bunch of other problems here, but we make those decisions, and court, you should do due deference to the executive branch. Now, if you are going to issue an injunction, allow us time to appeal it and to stay it, all the things signed off on here by Christopher D. Edelman out in the DOJ representing the Trump administration. And we had a bunch of declarations that also came in. I'll just flag these for you. But they also sent in this one, right? This Homeland Security guy submitted this, and he's explaining a lot of this, right? The LA field office, 20 million people, a lot of things here, bunch of immigration officers, logistical problems. We're doing our job based on probable cause, and it's kind of a mess out there. I personally observed protesters turn violent. At this time, demonstrators went up to 300 more at an underground parking lot. I observed 5 FPF inspectors, and just kind of explaining everything we just read through, And more declarations here from other people. This was the subject. This was from Hegseth, calling in the National Guard. Here's another memo, all for the court. And what happened was we had a hearing on this today. So I listened to the full audio of it, or about until we had to go live here. But Margot Cleveland was there, and she, of course, gave us the inside scoop. And she gives us a breakdown. She says, all right, at the start of the hearing, the judge was very verbose, and he was talking a lot about what is important and what is not. And so he went into the federal government, and he was basically asking them whether they complied with the law. They said, if you don't comply with the law, well, what can the president do? Or what can the National Guard do? And I think the obvious answer would be is the National Guard would have to leave, and we didn't really get into that. But the DOJ made the same arguments we read and said the president has the power to do it, says he's the commander-in-chief, he's the militia of the several states, and judge, you can't look at it. Now, the judge says it never went to Gavin Newsom, though, right? It's supposed to go through him. We spent a lot of time on this, through Newsom. So are you saying that he didn't need notice? I said, well, he got notice. It doesn't say by or with permission of, and so there's no veto process. So the DOJ explained it. There are two steps. Trump issues the order. DOD issues the second memo. It goes through the chain of command, and then everything gets executed. Then the judge was talking about rebellion. Is this actually a rebellion? The judge says, well, I think I have some discretion on that. Am I allowed to do this? Newsom's attorney came up, said, yes, Your Honor. They violated the law. And they were playing a nice game of patty cake really together. And to conclude all of this, the judge said he's going to have an order out very soon, hopefully today. So we'll do a refresh, see if that came out. But he says, I got to look at the record and make a determination on the record because I'm concerned about talking about the Marines. I'm not sure what the Marines are going to do. Nothing, just stand there and protect the buildings and people. You were not merely asked to decide the merits, Your Honor, but to countermand the president's authority. Well, they're saying that they're going to protect the federal officials, like the state is saying that. DOJ says, Your Honor, you got to balance the equities here. If you're going to enter the TRO, make it an injunction so we can appeal it. We don't have a position on the TRO. Judge says, I'll have an order out very soon. Let's see if he's dropped that for us here today so that we can read it. Guessing not, but there has been a lot of activity. We got a minute entry here. Hour and 9 minutes, but no order. So we'll keep our eye out for that one. But thank you to Margot Cleveland for reporting that. Now, meanwhile, Gavin Newsom is having a hard time. Newsom is now striking content creators who are commenting on his video, which was terrible. Of course, his audio wasn't working for the first little bit of it, but Larry O'Connor, who reports over for Town Hall and iHeart, or is being flagged now by iHeartMedia on behalf of Gavin Newsom, which is a copyright strike. So Newsom is trying to remove the bad videos making fun of him on the internet because he's so pathetic. And we also saw Homeland is pushing back on all of these lying politicians. They released this. They said, you know, open border politicians are making lying statements. And they called them out by name, calling out Governor Gavin Newsom, AOC, Karen Bass, Torres, Maxine Waters, Chris Murphy, bunch of blue, ultra blue Democrats from majorly blue areas, all defending illegal aliens in their districts because that's who they represent. Now, Trump was asked about this again today, of course. People are protesting him. There's this No Kings riot that is percolating to be had over this weekend. Trump says, wait a minute, I'm a king. How am I a king? Federal judges are stopping me everywhere I go.
There are several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call it? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, not kings in the White House, but there's plenty of so-called kings in the judiciary every time they issue a nationwide injunction to stop the president from executing the law under his constitutional power. So we'll keep our eye on the Newsom case. We'll see what the judge says in their order, but it might not go Trump's way. So the National Guard, or at least the Marines, might be segmented out. So National Guard might stay under Trump, but the Marines, maybe not. The judge was kind of squirrely about that, and also squirrely about the notice. So we'll see if we get a compromise ruling on this, but a battle in court today. We'll keep our eye on it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, one more update today, my friends. And it starts with Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi continues to unload on the sanctuary cities. She posted this explaining a new lawsuit now being filed against New York for undermining immigration enforcement, saying lawless sanctuary policies are driving the chaos we're seeing in California and elsewhere. We refuse to accept this blatant disregard for law and order anywhere in America. And a bunch of sanctuary governors were hauled into Congress today. Byron Donalds was lacing into this dude, Tim Walz, about his calling ICE agents Gestapo, which we'll get into. And PB&J Pritzker got also asked about going into the women's bathroom, and he got a little awkward there. Why'd you post that you think people should go into the women's restrooms? Did you go into the women's restrooms? But Pam Bondi gave us the full press briefing, saying New York Tishville is getting sued. Their policies are blocking immigration officials from arresting individuals at or near New York courthouses. And if they would just, when an illegal comes in and gets charged with a crime, if they would just hold them and hand them off to ICE, then they wouldn't have to come in and raid them. Understand? They don't want to do that. So by being non-cooperative, they're exacerbating the problem. Specifically, the law says, there's a lawsuit says there's a law called Protect Our Courts Act that shields dangerous aliens from being lawfully detained at a courthouse. Lawless sanctuary cities are the root cause of violence. New York's law comes after Trump issued his national emergency order, and they are now getting sued. So the full complaint is here. Let's see who it's addressed to. Hochul and Tishy Latish, all being sued by Pam Bondi, which is just perfect. She says, we can conduct an arrest near or at the courthouses. And the reason we want to do that is because it reduces the risk of flight. And these people are also usually screened for weapons before they come into the courthouse. We also have criminal warrants and immigration warrants as well. Now, contrary to this common sense approach, they'd rather have them protected, so we have to come and find them. There's a Protect Our Courts Act, which says you can't do this. Through a separate executive order that singles out the feds, New York has forbidden its employees from sharing any critical information to the feds. These laws are intolerable obstacles to the federal law enforcement. This prevents federal agents from conducting these arrests anywhere near a courthouse. Now, through these enactments, they are obstructing federal law enforcement, and they are facilitating the evasion of dangerous criminals from being apprehended by federal agents. That's wild. New York enactments also regulate federal officials by requiring them to get criminal arrest warrants before taking custody. Further, New York is intentionally obstructing the sharing of information, and so accordingly, this is all invalid. We have the Supremacy Clause, and our laws reign supreme. And so we're suing Tishy, Hochul, and New York because the Constitution vests the power to the president, and under the Supremacy Clause, a state law is preempted if it stands as an obstacle to the objectives of Congress. A state law is also invalid if it discriminates against the United States, and that's exactly what's happening here. Accordingly, Congress has the right to expel aliens, and we're doing that right now. Now, New York said, actually, we're going to overrule you, and we're not going to cooperate with your laws. And that's a problem. The POCA Act was passed in New York. It says any family or household member includes a bunch of people, and if you have an intimate relationship with them, they're all protected. Now, there were other executive orders from Cuomo saying don't cooperate with the feds about any of this stuff, and this amounts to obstruction. Information sharing provisions hinder ICE, and now we're suing. You violated the Supremacy Clause. You also are unlawfully regulating the federal government. You can't impose new requirements on our ICE agents. And you're discriminating against us too. And so, Pam Bondi says, we want this court to enter a judgment declaring New York's law and executive orders illegal, violating the Supremacy Clause, meaning they are unlawful and unenforceable, saying this court should also enter an injunction stopping New York, as well as anybody else in New York, from complying with those laws, start cooperating with us, and give us attorney's fees. Good to see this going on offense a bit. Sue them, make them defend their bad laws in their states in these courts. And of course, this is being filed in federal court, the Northern District of New York. So we'll see where this gets assigned, but Pam Bondi comes out swinging, and more sanctuary state governors were also in Congress today. Byron Donalds obliterating Tim Walz over his Gestapo comments.
You said earlier that the ICE agents under the orders of President Trump are a modern-day Gestapo. Do you realize how disgusting a phrase that is, considering the history of Nazi Germany? Would you like to recant that statement?
Would you, Tim?
What I said, Congressman, and I have a long history of supporting law enforcement, I said President Trump was using them as his modern-day Gestapo, not identifying who you are, coming up in unmarked vans, taking people away and giving...
Is it the responsibility of ICE to actually deport illegal aliens in the United States who are here? Isn't that their responsibility?
Yes, it is, Congressman, except that the Constitution is not an inconvenience. It's not an either-or.
Nobody said an
inconvenience.
You have a responsibility to deport illegal aliens, and the president is going through that process right now. And let's be very clear, the previous administration, they abused every process there is under border laws to allow more than 10 million people into the country illegally. And this is a burden on all Americans. And so the president is doing his job. So it is sick to refer to Americans who are ICE agents as Gestapo. Governor, you're wrong. You need to apologize to these agents. They're doing their jobs. They are Americans. They serve this country with honor and decency and respect. Do not diminish their work simply because you tried to make a cheap point that you could tweet. I yield back.
Yeah! Byron Donalds laying the ruckus down on Tim Walz, who is besmirching the good names of our ICE agents who are enforcing federal law against illegal invaders who have come into our country and should be deported immediately. Now, another sanctuary city governor called PB&J Pritzker, who is over in Illinois, was also there. And he said, in response to all these ICE raids, that people should protest. And he said one of those protests should be people who are men going into women's bathrooms, which is a weird thing to jump to. It's like, okay, boycott Trump hotels or something. But for Pritzker to be like, go into women's restrooms. What? Why? Anyways, he got called out about that today.
Here. Mr. Governor, do you think that biological men should be able to use women's restrooms?
I'm not sure how this has to do with immigration.
It's just a yes or no question.
Why are you?
It's very easy to answer.
This?
Do you think
I thought we were
men should be using
doing fact finding? I'm sorry.
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You tweeted that as a protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever, sir.
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
Sir, I'm not sure why we're on a topic that has nothing to do with
you're
today's hearing.
advocating for men to use women's restrooms, but you didn't do it?
I do not advocate that, no.
Well, actually, you did. You said everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today.
I can tell you that you are
regret
politicizing
saying
this in a way that what we ought to be focusing on is
Do you
the
regret
failure of the federal
encouraging men to
government
use women's restrooms?
and the Congress to deal with immigration reform.
Do you regret encouraging men to use women's restrooms?
Again, you're taking us on topics that have.
Did you ever
nothing to
consider
do
that
with
women don't
the
want you
subject
in their,
that you
in their
invited us here
bathrooms?
for? So you're.
He did. He definitely was using the women's bathrooms. You saw that very uncomfortable pause right there.
Use the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever, sir. No.
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
Sir.
Yep, he did. Pritzker P's sitting down. We knew it. We knew it. He got busted by Congress. Sitting down to pee, Pritzker from Illinois, busted in Congress. Now, we also saw Tim Walz just got reamed by Tom Emmer, and Dustin Grage is great over on X. He says, this beating lasted for 5 straight minutes, but we'll listen to a little bit of it and see how Tim Walz does here. Here's where it starts. As soon as we have Elon apparently cooperate with us. Elon, we're live. Come on.
That keep law enforcement from enforcing federal laws, close quote. On May 17th, just this spring, at the University of Minnesota Law School's commencement ceremony, you said, quote, Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. When you said the words modern-day Gestapo, you were referring to ICE agents. Gestapo, by the way, sir, was the official secret police of Hitler's Nazi Germany. So you're calling ICE agents modern-day Nazis. Given the attacks on ICE agents that took place in Los Angeles over the weekend, don't you regard your dangerous inflammatory rhetoric as a problem?
The questions do you want me to answer first?
So, sir, it saddens me that you refuse to express regret from comparing ICE to Nazis. ICE agents are brave Americans who get up every morning, leave their families, and put the ICE agent who is risking their life to protect our communities. Minnesota is all too familiar, by the way, with the chaos that ensues when you refuse to work with law enforcement to enforce the law. In May 2020, looting, acts of violence, and arson occurred on your watch in Minneapolis after you refused to bring in the National Guard. Governor, your agenda is clear. Free health care, free college and driver's licenses for illegals while handcuffing law enforcement when they're trying to protect our citizens and their communities. If you think that's not a sanctuary state, you shouldn't be governor. By turning Minnesota into a magnet for illegals, you have opened up our communities to dangerous criminals, including known terrorists, gang members, murderers, and child predators. You have sent a resounding message that if you're a hardworking, law-abiding citizen of Minnesota, your safety and well-being are not the priorities of Tim Walz and his administration. But if you're coming to our state illegally, you're not only welcome with open arms, you're entitled to free stuff on the taxpayer's dime. This is absolutely disgraceful. Governor Walz, your sanctuary state agenda has been defined by your utter failure. You have failed to enforce the rule of law. You have failed to uphold our national sovereignty. And most importantly, you have failed the people of Minnesota. The time for radical sanctuary state policy, sir, is over. The voters made that clear last November when they elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. You remember him, don't you? Governor, the time for real leaders and real leadership is now. And with that, sir, actually, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record the governor's tweet that I referenced from May 23rd, 2018, which makes it clear his hatred for federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered.
All right, so one more from Luna, who was lacing into him for being invested with the Chinese. So Tim Walz just got reamed all day long.
That you're tracking actually had an internal memo that was released that stated that the government of China considered you a prime target for influence operations. I'm letting you know that now because I do.
Yeah, and remember Tim Walz spent a lot of time over there with all those young boys teaching them things there.
Believe that you should be made aware of, if you are not already, that you are working with and going to be speaking at an organization and rally that not is just funded by Kristi Walton, the heiress of Walmart, but also has ties to the Chinese Progressive Association, largely funding it, that actually brags on their website that they are pro-Maoist. Also, too, funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. I know there's a lot of people on this committee that don't like billionaires interfering in politics, but say nothing when George Soros gets over $260 million from USAID through the last administration that's been funneled into some of these nonprofits and organizations. So I guess my question for you guys is, now that I've made you aware that these riots are not about illegals and they're not about immigrants, if they did, they would have been protesting under Barack Obama, who's also dubbed the deporter-in-chief. And frankly, I think many of you would say that Barack Obama was a good president. Are you going to say that Barack Obama wasn't a good president? Yes or no, Governor Walz? Do you think he was a good president?
Do I think Barack Obama was a good
Correct.
president? I think he did a good job.
Okay, how about you, Governor Pritzker?
I think he did a good job. Yes.
Hochul?
Copy and paste.
Hochul, and yes, he did do a good job.
Okay, next.
Copy and paste.
I think President Obama did a good job.
So then you'd understand that Barack Obama had the very same policies for the most part on immigration that Republicans are parroting today, and yet you guys are sitting here saying that we're Gestapo. And what I would tell you is that what happens with open borders is that the real people that are coming here, the ones that are exploited, actually it hurts people on both sides, not just Americans, but the illegals. Some of you had said here to the actual committee that you are doing what you can to assist these people, but what I would say is that your policies aren't actually done from a place of understanding and sympathy. I would say that it's actually doing the exact opposite. And when you use brown people, just like they use black people with BLM and Marxists during BLM
100%.
to usher that in, when you use brown people and you put Mexican flags with them saying that you stand up for illegal immigrants, but you follow the money and it's going back to the Communist Party, what you're essentially doing is using your platform as elected officials, the trust that the American people have put in you, essentially to usher in communism. You're not actually fighting for American values. Don't roll your eyes because it's a serious topic and that's where the money's coming from. So now I'm informing you, so now you guys can make your decisions, but please be informed, sir, Mr. Walz, that if you truly do uphold the American ideologies and perspectives on the Constitution, you should not be speaking at that rally. I've given you the correct information, and as of right now, I've authorized a letter to be sent to my office to the President of the United States to rescind millions of dollars in funding that we know are going to the No Kings protests that were authorized and basically given under the last administration.
Wild.
That is what Congress is supposed to do, not point fingers, not blame people, but actually ensure that the American people are protected and not fighting for foreign interests, foreign governments, and also the communist.
Will the gentlelady yield for...
Nice! From Representative Luna in the House, explaining to those people how they're pawns of much bigger forces. They're just useful idiots who just go out there and recite Democrat talking points. I couldn't have scripted it better myself. They're all just copy and pasting. I think you did a good job. I think you did a good job. I think you did a good job. Way to go, Tim Walz. Way to set the tone for the rest of your NPC governors. So we'll, of course, keep our eye on this. Shocking to hear that that No Kings rally against our current sitting president is going to be funded by American taxpayers to the tune of $100 million or so. Our last administration should be thoroughly investigated for that type of grift, which is basically Democratic Party embezzlement. So shout out to Luna for bringing that up. The lawsuit against the sanctuary states will continue. Like to see the DOJ going on a little bit of offense now, and we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, my friends. What a beautiful stream it has been. Thank you for joining us. If you're just getting here, quick recap on what we talked about today. We talked about this crazy senator called Padilla who went nuts on Kristi Noem and thought he was above the law. Thought he could just walk right up there and start asking her questions. Don't you know who I am? I'm Senator Padilla from California. So he came in, he got told and dealt with appropriately and escorted out nicely after interrupting Kristi's speech, not in the middle of a Q&A session, just barging in there, kind of like Fannie Willis when she did in that trial, like the Kool-Aid guy. But now he has been detained and was released, already got a conversation with Kristi Noem, so he could ask her all the questions he wanted right there, and largely resolved. Now, he came out, started crying about this, more or less, so we'll see if he turns this into something. I'm sure that they'll continue to exploit it. But we talked about it. We also talked about this Mexican-born representative who is screaming, it's just offensive as hell to me, screaming at Hegseth about how Hegseth is not worth his time as he's castigating Hegseth for enforcing the law, which is hurting, I guess, his homeland, where he came from, where he was born from. So the conflict there, I think, is on full display, and it's this disgusting sight. But this is the Democratic Party right now. We also saw Mark Lamont Hill get attacked by another crazy Democrat out there. And Trump went a little bit crazy, at least for now. We'll see if he's walking this back or not on the farmers. And I think we're also getting a bunch of new Chinese students too. So we're not real sure what's going on today. But Trump also walked that back a little bit today. We'll see if we get an order on it. If we get an order on, farmers and stuff, we'll deal with that when it comes. But Kristi Noem delivered today and acted like the adult in the room. The Democrats, as usual, did not. Then we turned our attention to the Newsom lawsuit. Trump submitted his response. Gavin is suing to get the National Guard kicked out of California. Trump responded to this, saying we can keep them there because we're the president. We have tons of lawful authority and precedent and case law to do it. And we had a hearing today with the judge, and he's going to issue a ruling. We'll keep our eye out for that one. Then we saw that Pam Bondi is suing another a sanctuary state called New York. The entire state, Tisch, Hochul, and the state of New York for obstructing federal law, saying the United States is the supreme law of the land and the states cannot impede federal enforcement. We saw Byron Donalds, we saw Brandon Gill, and Tim Walz get obliterated by Tom Emmer and Representative Anna Paulina Luna, all on the stream today. And now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting our work. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. If you haven't already done that, we really appreciate a subscribe. I was looking at the numbers. Something like 45% of people are not subscribed and watch the show, which breaks my heart because we want to see you come back here. So thanks for creating a YouTube account. Thanks for subscribing, or a Rumble account, or wherever you are. Thanks for signing up and subscribing. We appreciate that. All right, so my friends, now let's hear from you. Thank you so much for sending in these donos. Thanks for becoming membos and for being here on the day. Shout out to our amazing mods and meme smiths, modding the fort down for us, keeping things oh so nice and beautiful. Hey, Deluxe Knight sent this one in from this morning on the members only stream. Says, did you know that the Muffles Mexican pancake originated from the German immigrants? I did not know that. So the Mexicans stole the German pancakes too? In addition to trying to steal our land that we paid for? It's good to see you, Deluxe Knight. Deluxe Knight's a farmer, so he would know. Hey, it's Tomahawk Thursday, baby. Love it. Love it. Yes, okay, so it's Tri-Tip Tuesday and Tomahawk Thursday. No more tacos or pupusas or margaritas or guacamole here. It's now tomahawks and tri-tips. Better anyways. Hey, thank you for that. Bruce Rice, what's up? Bruce Rice, baby. Dun. Thank you for becoming a shout-out membo and signing up over on the YouTubes. Ravicus, what's up? Says, Kristi Noem is riding the tornado of FAFO. Junior senator from Cali got caught in her path today trying to storm her press conference. Ha, ha, ha. There's whirlwind Kristi Noem. Yeah, it was a good one. It was a lot of fun to watch him get shoved in handcuffs. Hey, Chris. Hey, C. Chris, what's up? Welcome aboard, C. Chris. Thank you, C. Chris, for becoming a membo. We'll see you on the members only streams in the mornings. And stick around, new members, for the after party today. Agent Pepsi. None of the vile Dems will be held accountable. Yeah, we'll see. We got a couple. We got Backdoor Dugan. She's getting prosecuted. We got Monica McIver. Yeah, pretty good. So we'll keep our eye on it, but I think Agent Pepsi, in terms of like, is Cash or Pam going to come out and do anything? We'll see. Chubby, hey, I've been seeing Newsom's Trump is authoritarian spiel all day, and I just laugh at the utter hypocrisy. National Guard and the Marines were brought in. to protect federal agents and buildings from being assaulted by rioters. Newsom, on the other hand, passed a bill last year banning voter ID requirements statewide after an indirect response to residents of Huntington Beach after they voted for and passed a voter ID measure for their local elections. Right. But yeah, Trump's the authoritarian from Chubby. So Gavin overrules the will of the people to enable his rigged elections to continue. But Trump is the bad guy. Got it. Thank you for that one, Chubby. Great comment. Hey, this old guy, Padillo. Tazexi Padillo. Something like that. Padillo. Thank you, this old guy. Yeah, it's Padillo, just like Quesadilla and like Chala Street. Hey, Doan, progressives are tactless, like the Chala cactus, you know? Hey, Doan, progressives are tactless as well as factless. It's true. Yeah, they're tactless as well as factless. It's true. Thank you, Doan. It's a good rhyme. Trying to think of another rhyme that goes with that, but I think you nailed it. Leonard S., what's up? J6 spent months and years in prison for less offensive acts than Padilla's. I think that's right. Yeah, no, all you got to do is be invited into the Capitol. Walk in through the barricades, through the chain, through the tour guides. You walk in. Solitary confinement for you. Hey, Sandy says, good logic covered the Gavin hearing. It couldn't be recorded, so Joe just repeated what he heard. That's a talent. Joe thinks Judge Breyer is going to rule in favor of Gavin, and based on what I heard, I think so too. Yeah, I listened to it. This will result in a disaster. Violence will explode if these thugs hear the National Guard can't be called up by Trump. Yeah, I think the judge might try to split it, right? Say the Marines got to go through a higher thing, but the National Guard can stay. Kind of a thing. We'll see. Shout out to Good Logic. Check his channel out. Knox Bierman, what's up? Happy Thursday, all. Did any of you American men tell the government that you didn't want to work construction? I did. I worked a lot of construction. I built swimming pools. I know of no American nurses that decided not to nurse anymore, yet most of the hospital staff is from the Philippines. This is about cheap and illegal labor. No one I know wanted to stop working these jobs. Yeah, no, I cleaned pools for a long time and started to build pools. I dug a lot of ditches. I dug a whole swimming pool one summer by hand on the side of a mountain because we only had a two-foot access on the side of a mountain and we couldn't get any heavy equipment back there. So we dug it out by buckets. It's what I did in high school and college. Now, I'm not so sure that those jobs are available anymore for young American boys like I was, young American men. I don't know if that's happening anymore. But it was very good for me. It was very formative for me. I got to get out there, use my hands, work on things. I don't know, is that still happening? Are there still jobs like that for young men? Hey, Knox, correction. The nurses do have work permits from Knox. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree. I don't think it's about American citizens. Like, nothing about this is about American citizens. It's about cheap votes or cheap labor. And everything is getting inflated away, including your citizenship, right? So your jobs, your house, everything is just being worth less now. And we're being invaded. Knox, thank you. Rob, hey, I dare him to do that at the White House when Trump is speaking or signing documents. Ha, ha, ha. F-A-F-O. Knox says, I went to the dentist and the doctor herself barely spoke English. They're all Chinese. Incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it's like, what dentist did you go to? I've experienced that. Like, they set up a lot of these, like, it feels like, you know, like hedge funds or something set up like these dental offices. You're like, what's going on over here? And yeah, notice that, Knox. Says, so Americans don't go to dental school anymore as the job is too dirty, I guess? I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Like, I did a lot of like service and manual labor jobs. Like I did catering. I didn't do like any serving, but you know, I worked my way kind of up through construction, and then I eventually started to like do some sales and stuff like that. But you know, I think it was very formative for me. And so to think that that's not happening anymore and everybody's just like glued to their phones, like I didn't have a cell phone. When I was cleaning pools, I was out with the Sony Walkman, right? The yellow Walkman with those weird headphones you put in here, cleaning swimming pools. John Libby it was good for me. And I thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, my boy's going to be cleaning some swimming pools for sure, or whatever. John Libby, do you think this senator was choked up because President Scheinbaum is going to hold his failure against him? She doesn't deserve the proper spelling for Scheinbaum. Yeah, I don't know. I guess she's running things down there since the whole Reconquista is in full swing now. We've even got foreign congressmen screaming at Hegseth. Knox, all these Democrat men are like skinny roosters fighting in the crappy yard. They all want to be the big alpha male. As a real woman, I can tell you none of them are appealing. Disgusting. Yuck. Yeah. Padilla looks soft, very, very soft, and he got treated accordingly. But this is an interesting comment, Knox. It's like, where are the Democrats? Like, are the Democrat men? For me, when I see a foreign flag in my country, I don't know about you, but I get like a visceral reaction. Very, very angry instantly. It's almost like hardwired into my brain. Like when I see these flags flying around in LA, blood boils like instantly. Like, all right, kick every one of them out. I don't care. Instantly. Because I don't know. I think it's kind of inherent, probably embedded into our DNA. Remember, we've only been around for 39, coming up on 40 years. But the human body as a model, like the human, genome, been around for quite some time and has a lot of programming baked into that genetic code. And there's something about foreign invaders coming into your home, coming into your community, coming into your society. And when you see that, causes just an instinctual, visceral reaction. So I have that. I know many of you do. That's why you're here and, facilitating this conversation. But where are the Democrats? They don't they're fine with that. They don't care. They call this just like an expression of free speech in their country. Like, even if you're a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, like you love abortion and you love Ukraine or whatever, you're okay with foreign flags flying around in your neighborhood and that doesn't cause anything in you? Are you a man at all? Do you have any concept of protective forces around you? Like, how can you exist like that? I don't know. Mizzy M, the mentality of people who are born in another country and have the hubris to lecture Pete Hegseth, foreign invaders, is correct. Is that, yeah. I get so mad about it. It's like, how dare you come in here? Hegseth is trying to enforce the law. The law is being enforced against illegal Mexicans. You're from Mexico, and you're going to come in here and tell him that he can't do his job because your homeland is having people who are harmed by this? And the Republicans are like, don't be a bigot. Don't say anything about that. Object Class Keeter, hey, late to the party. I find it rich for the California senator regarding the questioning. Just watch how they treat the GOP reps in the California legislative sessions, completely shutting them down for basic questions and comments on the floor. Yeah, we don't want the California model for the rest of our country. Mach Schnell, thank you, Mach Schnell, for bringing in 50 new members. Look who's coming in. Josh Macaben, what's up? F4FAB2. Jacob R, what's up? Brett W. Dancer Mom, giant fan. John is here. Rooster Roy. Bristol's channel. Haley's Comet. Irish Russ, what's up, Agent Pepsi? Angela Salatino is here. Lori Labadamier is here. Planker. Carl. Dennis. Joshua Contoris. What's up, Lovely Soul? Lady Hawk. Craig Kaufman. Dan L. Gail Gafford. We got Bruce Rose. Corey Goodoo. What's up, Angie, Jack, Melissa, Solitary Gamer, FledX. We got McClafly, Guy, JCR, Major Johnson, and Gene Edwards. Gifted membos, courtesy of Mach Schnell. Thank you, Mach Schnell, for doing that. And 50 new friends. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Spudman, what's up? Says Padilla is here. Padilla says, I demand to speak to the secretary. Security says, well, just make an appointment. Oh, no. Well, you can speak to her as soon as we take you out of these handcuffs. No problem. Hey, Seen the Moment. Thank you, Seen the Moment, for becoming a supporter over on the tubes. Grab the members only stream from this morning. And see you on the after party here in a minute. Hey, King of Biltong. What's up, King of Biltong? Announcing Premium Angus and Wagyu Biltong from Biltong, USA. High protein, no additives, authentic handcrafted meat snack, naturally air dried and delicious over at BiltongUSA.com. And he created a code for us, Robert, at checkout of King of Biltong. Thanks, King of Biltong. Hey, call me legend. said, I heard the DOJ has 10,000 lawyers, but is there a danger that with all the legal challenges to policy, deportation challenges, and violent lefty criminality, that they won't have enough to perform the duties they're needed to? Yeah, actually, I think it is a risk, actually. And by the way, like, all 10,000 of those are not like good foot soldiers, right? About probably 80 to 90% of those are still working for the other team. So just to be ultra clear about that. So how do you reform that? It's a lot of work. And they're actively recruiting. I got an interesting email, actually. I got an interesting email from, I think it was a captain. The captain of some I forget, region, branch or whatever from the armed services, I think the Marine Corps, sent an email asking about JAG officers. So lawyers in the military sent an email. Hey, we're looking for good people. If you're interested. I'm like, maybe. All right, we're having some streaming problems. All right, so we'll wrap it up. Call me a legend. What's up? Thank you for that. Hopefully they don't have that. Doan says, all right, Title 10, U.S. Code 12406 says POTUS can mobilize federal troops of any number to enforce federal law. From Doan. Thank you, Doan, for the details. Uncle Bozy, what's up? I think the administration should prioritize who ICE removes first. For example, criminals, gang members, spies, and then illegals who are not working and on welfare. And finally, by the time they get to the illegals who are working, producing and not breaking laws other than illegal entry, it will be years in the future. Anyway, nobody is going to be lining up to replace farm workers. So yes, deport the farm workers, construction workers, etc., but deport them last. From Uncle Bozy. Spud says, Kings don't have to consider limitations of the Constitution, so Newsom calling Trump acting like a monarch doesn't hold water. Also, Newsom swears an oath to office, which includes adherence to the Constitution. Obviously, Newsom would make a horrible POTUS, since due to his actions, he has no intention in following it. Talk about accusing others what you are guilty of. Thank you for that one, Spuds. Cheryl's, hey, just wanted to help support the channel. Don't really have any questions. It's just Cheryl, not Cheryl's with an S. Cheryl, thank you for that. Very nice dono. And I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here and supporting us. Thanks for watching on Rumble. Shout out to our Rumble friends. And Cheryl, without the S, I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful evening. Thank you again. Hey, Matt Ostrander. Drunken Pelosi is on TV over Padilla. Having a meltdown on that one? Sounds about right. I'm sure they're going to rally around this dude. They want him to be their new George Floyd. You know, he got arrested with the knee. Get your knee off my neck. TJ Scanlon says the Minneapolis ICE raid found 900 pounds of meth. Yeah, that also sounds about right. And Walz is okay with that because he likes illegals. Spud says Rob is not allowed to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He is way too young. You don't vote for kings. Apparently that's from Monty Python. See, and this is a smart tactic, Spuds. Like, the reason I won't watch Monty Python, really, is because people say you have to. You haven't seen it? You have to. No, I've not seen it. You have to watch it. Guess what? I'm not. Why? Because you told me I have to. Like, that's literally the reason. Because it's been happening my whole life. So you have to watch it. Well, in that case, I'm not going to do it. I don't know why I'm wired that way. I don't know why. It's just how it is. So when someone comes back out and says Rob is not allowed to watch Monty Python, it's called reverse psychology, you know. He's way too young. He can't watch this. And it's like, oh yeah? Watch me turn it on right now, Spuds. But I'm not going to do it, obviously. So, Sandy, Trump's no king protest comment was an obfuscation of the question. He didn't want to talk about the protest coming, so he joked about being a king. Ooh, that's an interesting observation, Sandy. Yeah, just kind of laugh it off because it could be a big thing, especially if they got $100 million from us. Hey, from America, Bruce Rice, baby, 32 months as a membo. Great to see you, Bruce Rice. Thanks for being here for 32 months. Hello again, watching the Watchers fam. Signing in. Good to see you, Bruce Rice. Thank you for being here for 32 months, man. That's a long time. We've been through some serious stuff together. Off-Label Podcast says, oh, this hearing is infuriating. It's 8 hours long. Off-Label. You've been a membo for a month, Off-Label. First month's the hardest. Gets easier from there. Thanks for being a membo. And have a great stream. Chubby says the title governor should be heavily emphasized when addressing Tim Walz, just to keep rubbing it in that he's not VP. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Governor Walz, which is all you'll ever be. Question for you. Brenda TJ says, could some illegal immigrants potentially claim that they are not illegal because Biden invited them to come, therefore they shouldn't be deported? Yeah, and that's another argument they're making. In fact, I saw AOC making this argument recently, saying that, so the example I think would be like the TPS people. Biden invited like 500,000 so-called TPS people from Venezuela and some other places with the stroke of a pen. Temporary protected status, brought them in. Mayorkas said they could stay. So are they really illegal? Not really. Biden invited them in. Now, Trump turned around and then canceled it, right? And said, okay, well, it was temporary protected status. So that temporary status is now expired. So go home. So to say like those people came illegally is not, I would say, legally accurate. Like Joe Biden invited them in. Now, Joe Biden and Mayorkas were acting in a traitorous manner and exploiting the law to grant temporary protection to people who were not entitled to it under the law in our reading of it. But they did it, like they exploited the law to bring them in. So it's hard to say that those are illegal people, but they are illegal now if they don't leave because their status has been canceled, right? So, or it's not being renewed, which is in full discretion. And they knew that coming in. It was never a permanent grant. They never had lawful permanent residence or, extending visas or any of those things. And the law says they could cancel it and the courts agreed. So they're being canceled and they're saying, well, they're not illegal. Well, they're not here illegally, but their lawful basis for here is now expired. So they are going to become illegal if they don't leave, because they no longer have a basis for being here. Sandy, we could have an interesting dynamic if Breyer rules in favor of Gavin. Northcom has been activated to support ICE. Their oath is to defend the country. They can't follow the judge's unlawful order regardless of Trump appealing it. Great to see you, Sandy. Thank you for that. Jeffrey Adams. Rob, were you able to listen to the King call? No. Are you talking about the No Kings protest? No, we didn't check that one out. No, but I think they're having multiple calls in preparation for their hearing or for their protest. Deluxe Night, that Luna SmackDown was awesome. Yeah, she was on a tear. And how are they all of a sudden so upset with Trump, but they were okay with Joe Biden? Copying and pasting each other's opinions. Obama, copying and pasting everybody's opinions on them. Doan, should employers who knowingly hired illegals and paid them under the table skate? Great question for Doan. And I think it's a great question that deserves a lot of discussion. Thank you, Doan. Zone Girl, they had to take back the Alamo in San Antonio, and the National Guard were sent in to protect the Alamo. From Zone Girl. Deluxe Knight says, I also like T-Bone Tuesday also. Good comment there. T-Bone Tuesday is another good one. Tri-Tip and Tomahawk Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sharpie Guy, so happy to see some offense from the Republicans today. The linebacker tackle this morning on the Membo stream was great. I think he forgot he didn't have his helmet on. Might have been the top of the head with the cop, that little coward threw his water bottle. And then someone else performed a textbook tackle on that POS. Everyone send some prayers and kudos to that dude. He's an American hero. Hope he's okay, y'all. We watched a great tackle this morning on the Membo stream. It was great. Doan, 23andMe sells all DNA assets to China for $10 billion. Did that go through? China has everyone's DNA over there? I never used the service, but yikes, that's pretty scary. So they can just create another, well, they're already bringing fungi and worms into the United States through the University of Michigan in Detroit. So that's great. Deluxe Knight, what's up? Farmer says, dental hygienists are huge here in Southeast Washington at our local community college. I'd swear there was a new practice popping up every other week. I've noticed that. There's like a lot of, it feels like a lot of like capital in the dental space. Feels like they're standing up a lot of these things. Pinochet's helicopter tours. Rob, crazy question. I have an outdoor fountain at work. I had to repair the drain bowls. We can't find anyone to repair the liner I had to cut. Do you know of an adhesive I can use to glue to gunite. Ooh, that's a good one. So for the gunite stuff, like, so the liner to glue to gunite. So I think your best bet might be some sort of an epoxy, like a masonry type of an epoxy. I don't have a lot of experience with liners. Here's why. So we don't use liners in Arizona. We use plaster or PebbleTech or a 3M product or something else. We don't use liners here. And the gunite, the shotcrete is what we call it. Generally, if you're going to have a shotcrete problem, you got to cut that out. And if you're going to make a repair, you're also going to steel and pin it. So we actually use rebar. So we actually drill into the gunite and put steel in there, and then basically weld that steel or fasten that steel into the gunite, and then make your repair around the steel. So how to reattach a liner to gunite? I'd probably consider an epoxy. Yeah, and see if that would work. But that's my best solution on that one. Sandy, Knox Bierman is so right about the cough men in the Democratic Party. They are such a turnoff. Nothing would make me attracted to one. I like my men to be manly. Yeah, the Democrats, it's a strange thing. It's like, where is that? Like, if they just got some more, is it a testosterone problem? What is that? If they boosted those numbers up, would they be? I think there is a correlation between that, but how do we solve that? And why? Watchers, the Padilla incident shows me the Dems are desperate to change the narrative. See, nearly all of the Democrat senators were conveniently near the Senate chamber right after the Padilla incident. It shows coordination, but very poor implementation. I only can wonder what a desperate Dem party does next to change the narrative. Yeah, maybe these protests will. Yeah, Boopsie. Hey, my son in the Army, Fort Drum, New York, gets a 4-day weekend for Juneteenth. I'm happy for him, but I'm disappointed Hegseth didn't change that date. It might be true to history, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem very patriotic. Just controversial. Boopsie, shout out to your boy. We thank him for his service in the Army in Fort Drum, New York. And thanks for being a great mama to an American serviceman. What's up, Chubby? You don't have to watch Monty Python, okay? But you are doing yourself a disservice by not, and you're missing a lot of valuable cultural reference material. It's a good attempt, Chubby. It's pretty good. I see you're pulling at the FOMO string. You know, like there might be some good content in there that could be additive that I could work into this from time to time. But the needle's not moving towards watching it, though, so thank you, Chubby. Good effort, though. Spuds, I thought exploiting people as slaves was abolished under the Constitution. Unless you're a Latinx, then we don't really care. You can shove kids in the floorboards, and FBI will let you come through the country. Says, it seems that the DNC is back to their old ways, which in part was the reason for the Civil War. Besides, Kamala said, don't come. Remember, she did. She went down to Guatemala, said, don't come. They came in large numbers. And they came aggressively. So, my friends, thank you so much for sending those in. Very fun, great comments. Thanks for your support. Thanks, and welcome to the new membos who are coming in. Members, we're going to have an after party and stick around. Reminder, tomorrow, we're coming back. We're doing an early show. It's going to be Friday. We're excited about that. And we'll be here early because your boy is going to travel back down to the valley. We're going to go have a lake day with the family, celebrate Father's Day, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to be out of pocket tomorrow afternoon and on Saturday. So our next stream after tomorrow morning will be on Monday. So make sure you're joining us tomorrow. It's going to be Friday, baby, and we're excited to get into it. So we're going to pause here for the evening, my friends. Want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who are modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and beautiful and orderly around here. Still haven't figured out how to stream on X yet for some reason. It's not really working, but we'll figure that out. So we don't have any comments on X, but we'll leave it there. Want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. K Bean in the house, Carrie B, Donut, John, thank you very much. Neuro D, we have Dog Digger, Janek, Just Rhonda, G-Gum, Elliot, and all of our friends keeping things nice and orderly around here. Thank you very much to our amazing mods. My friends, we're going to pause there for the evening. We're coming back tomorrow morning for our live stream on the day. 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to see what the Friday has in store, and we're going to get into it again. So We'll be back tomorrow. In order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow morning. Make it a great night. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers shine in the light. Watching the watchers defending what's right. Watching the watchers each night, together and live.